The text message arrived at 11:47 p.m. while I was nursing my bruised knuckles at Lucky's gym, and it changed everything. Dad, you need to come home. Now. Mom's not alone. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Daniel Hart, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had it all figured out. 44 years old, married to Melissa for 18 years, father to Erin, who just started her sophomore year at State. I'd built a decent contracting business in Millside, this post-industrial Midwest town where everyone knows everyone's business and the gossip travels faster than the morning coffee at Rosie's Diner. But here's the thing about having it all figured out. Life has a sick sense of humor. 3 weeks earlier, Charles Mercer, my former business partner and the man I'd trusted with half my company, had called me into his office with that shit-eating grin I should have recognized as trouble. The bastard had restructured our partnership agreement while I was dealing with my father's funeral arrangements. Legal, technically, but dirty as hell. "Danny boy," he'd said, sliding a pathetic severance check across his mahogany desk. "Sometimes business is just business, nothing personal." Nothing personal, right. The man had been to my backyard barbecues, knew my daughter's middle name, and had shaken my hand while screwing me over. Now, staring at Erin's text, my stomach dropped like a stone in a well. I knew exactly who was with Melissa at this hour. The pieces had been falling into place for weeks. Her late nights at work, the secretive phone calls, the way she'd started dressing differently. More expensive, more like she was trying to impress someone. I drove home through Millside's empty streets, past the shuttered factories and flickering neon signs of dive bars where men like me went to forget their problems. The rain had started again, turning the asphalt into a mirror that reflected the town's decay back at itself. Our house sat in what used to be the nice part of town, before the plant closures and white flight. 2 stories of false promises and mortgage payments, with Melissa's BMW in the driveway next to a silver Lexus I recognized immediately. Charles Mercer's car. I sat in my truck for a full minute, engine ticking as it cooled, watching the upstairs bedroom window where shadows moved behind drawn curtains. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from something darker, something that tasted like copper and felt like electricity in my veins. The front door was unlocked. Of course it was. They weren't expecting me home until morning from my job interview in Cleveland, an interview that had gone better than I'd let on. Much better. I climbed the stairs slowly, each creak of the old wood announcing my presence to anyone who cared to listen. The bedroom door was cracked open just enough to see everything I needed to see. Melissa, my wife of 18 years, naked and straddling the man who'd destroyed my livelihood. Charles, grunting and sweating like the pig he was, his hands gripping her hips while she rode him with an enthusiasm she hadn't shown me in years. They were so caught up in their performance, they didn't notice me standing there, watching, taking mental photographs I'd never be able to unsee. "That's interesting," I said finally, my voice cutting through their panting like a blade. Melissa scrambled off Charles, grabbing for the sheet, her face flushed with something that wasn't shame. Annoyance, maybe, like I'd interrupted something important. Charles didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. He sat up against the headboard, my headboard, and smirked. "Danny, we need to talk." "Do we?" I stepped into the room, noting every detail. Melissa's clothes scattered on the floor. The bottle of wine they'd shared. The good stuff from our anniversary collection. The way Charles looked at me like I was an inconvenience rather than the man whose life he'd systematically destroyed. "This isn't how we wanted you to find out," Melissa said, wrapping the sheet around herself. No apology in her voice, no regret. Just irritation at being caught. "How long?" I asked. "Danny, how long?" Charles answered instead, that smug grin never leaving his face. 6 months, maybe 7. Time flies when you're having fun. 6 months. That meant it had started before he'd screwed me out of my business. While he was planning my professional execution, he was already planning this personal one. "Get dressed," I told them both. "Get out of my house." "Actually," Charles said, reaching for his pants with infuriating casualness, "this is going to be Melissa's house pretty soon. Community property laws are a bitch, aren't they?" That's when I noticed the papers on the dresser. Legal documents. Divorce papers. Already filled out and ready for my signature. "You've been busy," I said. "We're in love, Danny," Melissa said, like that explained everything. Like love was some kind of get-out-of-jail-free card for destroying someone's life. "You can't understand what Charles and I have together." What they had together, right. What they had was my money, my house, and apparently my bed. What I had was a front row seat to my own demolition. I turned and walked out without another word, but not before I'd memorized every detail of that room. The way Charles's expensive watch sat on my nightstand, the way Melissa's wedding ring, my grandmother's ring, lay forgotten on the floor next to her discarded panties. Outside, the rain had intensified, turning the night into a watercolor painting of blurred lights and running mascara. I stood next to Charles's Lexus for a moment, keys in hand, thinking about choices and consequences. Then I keyed a long, deep scratch along the driver's side, from headlight to taillight. It felt good, really good, like the first hit of whiskey after a long, dry day. But I wasn't done. I popped the gas tank cover and emptied a protein shake into it, chocolate-flavored, because I've always believed in adding insult to injury. The sugar would caramelize in his engine, turning his pristine Lexus into an expensive paperweight. I took a selfie with the damaged car and texted it to Charles with the caption, "Thanks for the severance package, partner." Then I drove away, leaving my old life in the rearview mirror and my wife's shocked face framed in our bedroom window. So, the next morning, I woke up in a motel room that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams, with 17 missed calls from Melissa and 3 from Charles. I ignored them all and drove to Lucky's gym, where the old man was already setting up for the morning boxing classes. Lucas Lucky Torres had been my friend since high school, back when we were both stupid enough to think we could fight our way out of Millside. He'd opened the gym with his Army disability pay after losing his leg in Afghanistan, and it had become a sanctuary for men like us, guys who needed to hit something that wouldn't hit back or call the cops. "You look like shit," Lucky said by way of greeting, not looking up from wrapping his hands. "Feel worse. Heard about your domestic situation. Small town, big mouths." Of course he'd heard. In Millside, news traveled faster than gossip, and gossip traveled at light speed. By now, half the town probably knew about Melissa and Charles. The other half would know by lunch. "What's the word on the street?" I asked. Lucky shrugged. "Same as always. Rich asshole takes what he wants, working man gets screwed. Some things never change." "Maybe they should." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw recognition in his eyes. He'd seen that look before, in the mirror probably, back when some Taliban asshole had taken his leg and left him with phantom pain and a purple heart. "Don't go down like a chump, Danny," he said. "You want revenge? Make 'em bleed where it hurts. Reputation, money, ego. But use your head, not your fists." "What if I want to use both?" "Then we better get you back in fighting shape first." I spent the next week at Lucky's, relearning the sweet science of violence while my lawyer explained the bitter reality of divorce law. Melissa had filed first, claiming irreconcilable differences and asking for half of everything I'd built. The house, the business assets Charles hadn't already stolen, even my truck. She'd also frozen our joint accounts and canceled my credit cards, leaving me with about $300 in cash and a burning desire to watch the world burn. But I wasn't just planning to burn it down. I was planning to salt the earth. The first shot fired came from an unexpected direction, my own daughter. Erin posted a TikTok video that went viral in Millside's small social media ecosystem. Ever feel like your family's just a lie? Our family drama? You are real talk, year Millside messy. The video showed her in her dorm room, talking about trust and betrayal without naming names, but anyone who knew our family could read between the lines. Within hours, it had been shared across every local Facebook group and neighborhood chat. Melissa called me, screaming, "Control your daughter." "She's 18, I said calmly. "And she's not wrong." "This is humiliating, Danny. People are talking." "Good. Maybe they should know what kind of woman you really are." "What kind of woman am I, Danny? The kind who fell in love? The kind who wants more than a life married to a blue-collar loser who peaked in high school?" Blue-collar loser. That stung, mainly because there was just enough truth in it to draw blood. I had peaked in high school, at least athletically. I had chosen trade work over college. I had been content with a simple life in a simple town. But I'd also been faithful. I'd also been honest. I'd also been there every night for 18 years, while she built her career and her resentments. "You know what kind of woman you are, Melissa," I said. "The kind who fucks her husband's business partner while planning to take half his assets. There's a word for that." She hung up on me. That night, I drove past our house. Her house now, according to the restraining order she'd filed, and saw Charles's car in the driveway. Not the Lexus I'd vandalized, but a rental. A red Mustang convertible, because apparently he was having a midlife crisis to go with his midlife affair. I parked across the street and waited. At 10:30, they came out together, dressed for a night on the town. Melissa wore a black dress I'd never seen before, probably bought with our joint credit card before she'd frozen me out. Charles wore a suit that cost more than I used to make in a week, They were going to Donovan's, the upscale restaurant where Millside's elite went to see and be seen, where they could flaunt their relationship in front of everyone who mattered. I followed them. Donovan's was packed for a Thursday night, full of local business owners and their trophy wives, city council members and their mistresses, all the people who ran Millside's small but vicious social hierarchy. Melissa and Charles got the best table, right in the center where everyone could see them. I took a seat at the bar, ordered a beer, and watched. They were performing, putting on a show for their audience. Charles kept his hand on Melissa's thigh, making sure everyone could see his claim on her. Melissa laughed too loudly at his jokes, playing the part of the smitten woman who'd finally found her true love. It was nauseating, but it was also perfect. I waited until they'd had a few drinks, until Charles was feeling confident and Melissa was feeling invincible. Then I walked over to their table. "Evening, folks," I said pleasantly. "Mind if I join you?" Charles started to stand, his face flushing red. "You need to leave, Danny. Now." "This is a public restaurant," I said, pulling out a chair. "Besides, I wanted to congratulate you both. True love is so rare these days." Melissa grabbed Charles's arm. "Don't," she whispered. But Charles was drunk on wine and power and the attention of the room. He was also stupid. "You're pathetic," he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "A washed-up has-been who can't accept that his wife upgraded." "Upgraded," I repeated thoughtfully. "That's one way to put it, though I have to wonder, what does that make you, the trade-in model?" Charles stood up fast, his chair scraping against the floor. The restaurant went quiet, sensing drama. "You want to do this here?" he said. "Do what? Have a conversation with my wife and her boyfriend? I thought we were all adults here." "Ex-wife," Melissa hissed. "And yes, we're adults. Adults who don't make scenes in restaurants." "You're right," I said, standing up. "Adults handle their business privately, like in bedrooms, behind their partners' backs, with their partner's money." Charles took a swing at me then, a wild haymaker that telegraphed itself from 3 counties away. I ducked easily, letting his momentum carry him forward into the table behind us, where Mayor Patterson was having dinner with his wife. The mayor's wine glass went flying, splashing red wine across his wife's white dress. She screamed. The mayor stood up, shouting. Charles tried to apologize while simultaneously trying to throw another punch at me. That's when Officer Martinez appeared, off duty, having dinner with his girlfriend, but still a cop. He grabbed Charles's arm just as Charles wound up for another swing. "That's enough," Martinez said. "This asshole attacked me," Charles protested. "I saw the whole thing," said Mrs. Patterson, dabbing wine from her dress. "That man threw the first punch, unprovoked." Martinez looked at me. I shrugged innocently. I was just trying to have a conversation. 20 minutes later, Charles was in handcuffs, charged with assault and public intoxication. Melissa was crying in the parking lot, her perfect evening ruined, her boyfriend in jail, and half of Millside's social elite having witnessed the whole thing. "You planned this," she accused me as I walked to my truck. "I planned to have a drink," I said. "Your boyfriend planned to throw punches at cops. Guess we both got what we wanted." I drove home to my motel room feeling better than I had in weeks. But this was just the beginning. Over the next few days, I put Lucky's advice to work. I started gathering intelligence, using skills I'd learned in the Army and refined through 18 years of marriage to a woman who thought she was smarter than everyone else. Melissa had always been careless with her phone, leaving it unlocked, never clearing her browser history. During our marriage, I'd installed a family tracking app for safety. She'd forgotten about it, but I hadn't. I could see everywhere she went, every stop she made. That's how I discovered the storage unit. She visited it every Tuesday and Thursday, always for exactly 30 minutes. When I followed her there, I watched her remove boxes of documents and what looked like cash. Lots of cash. A little research revealed that the storage unit was rented under her maiden name and had been active for 8 months. 8 months of secret trips, secret documents, secret money. I waited until she left, then had a conversation with Jerry, the storage facility manager. Jerry owed me a favor from when I'd fixed his roof for free after the tornado 2 years ago. "I'm not saying I can get you in there," Jerry said, "but I am saying that sometimes people forget to lock their units properly, and sometimes the security cameras malfunction for exactly 15 minutes during shift changes." 15 minutes was all I needed. The storage unit was full of evidence of Melissa's long-term planning. Bank statements showing money systematically moved from our joint accounts to private accounts in her name. Copies of business documents related to Charles's new company, documents that showed they'd been planning to use my severance money and half the house sale to capitalize their venture. But the most interesting discovery was a folder labeled Insurance. Melissa had taken out a life insurance policy on me 6 months ago, a big one. $2 million, with her as the sole beneficiary. Suddenly, her eagerness to get me out of the house took on a darker meaning. I photographed everything, uploaded it to a secure cloud account, and left the storage unit exactly as I'd found it. But now I had ammunition. The next phase of my plan required help, and I knew exactly who to call. Tommy Kowalski had been my best friend since elementary school until Melissa had poisoned that relationship too. She'd convinced me that Tommy was a bad influence, that his drinking and gambling were dragging me down. Like an idiot, I'd believed her and gradually cut him out of my life. But Tommy ran the most popular bar in Millside, Kowalski's Tavern, and he knew everyone's secrets. More importantly, he had no love for Charles Mercer, who'd tried to buy the building out from under him 2 years ago. "Danny Hart," Tommy said when I walked into his bar. "Heard you've been having some domestic troubles." "Heard you've been talking to my wife," I replied. He poured me a beer without being asked. "She came in here last week with her new boyfriend. Wanted me to tell her stories about your drinking, your gambling, your womanizing. Problem is, you never did any of those things." "What did you tell her?" "Told her to go fuck herself. Politely, of course. This is a classy establishment." I laughed for the first time in weeks. "I need a favor, Tommy." "Name it." "I need you to throw a party." The party was Tommy's idea of genius, a Millside business network mixer, designed to bring together all the local entrepreneurs and power players, the kind of event Charles couldn't resist, especially since he was trying to establish himself as a major player in town. Tommy sent out invitations to everyone who mattered, including Charles and Melissa. He also invited the local newspaper, the mayor, and half the city council. It was going to be the social event of the month. What Charles and Melissa didn't know was that I would be there too, as Tommy's business consultant, and that I had a presentation planned. The night of the party, I arrived early to help Tommy set up. We placed wireless speakers throughout the bar, connected to a tablet I controlled. We also set up a small projector in the back room, aimed at a blank wall that could be seen from the main bar area. By 8 o'clock, the place was packed. Charles arrived fashionably late with Melissa on his arm, both of them dressed like they were attending a charity gala instead of a mixer at a neighborhood bar. They made a grand entrance, working the room, shaking hands, playing the part of Millside's new power couple. I watched from the corner, nursing a beer and waiting for the right moment. It came at 9:30, right after Charles had finished glad-handing the mayor and was holding court with a group of local business owners, bragging about his new venture and how he'd restructured some partnerships to make it happen. I activated the projector. The first image that appeared on the wall was a bank statement showing the transfer of $50,000 from our joint account to Charles's business account, dated 3 days after he'd fired me. The room went quiet as people noticed the projection. The second image was a text message from Melissa to Charles. "Danny's so stupid he doesn't even know we're using his money to start our company. This is almost too easy." Someone in the crowd gasped. The third image was the life insurance policy. Charles spun around, looking for me, his face red with rage and embarrassment. "You son of a bitch!" Now, I said, stepping into the light. "We're all adults here. Adults who handle their business publicly, apparently." Melissa was pulling on Charles's arm, trying to get him to leave, but he was too angry and too drunk to think straight. "You think you're clever?" he shouted. "You think this changes anything? You're still a loser, Danny. You're still the guy who got played by his own wife." "You're right," I said calmly. "I did get played, but here's the thing about being underestimated. People don't see the comeback coming." I pulled out my phone and showed the room a contract, a big contract. The Cleveland job I'd interviewed for wasn't just any job. It was a $2.5 million municipal contract to renovate the city's historic district, a contract I'd won by underbidding Charles's company by 30%. "Turns out," I announced to the room, "the city of Cleveland doesn't like doing business with men who assault police officers. Something about character and reliability." Charles's face went white. His new business venture had been banking on that Cleveland contract. Without it, he was finished. But I wasn't done. "I also thought you'd all like to know that Charles and Melissa have been planning to leave Millside as soon as they liquidate their assets here. Something about this town being beneath them and full of small-minded people." I played an audio recording from Melissa's phone, a conversation she'd had with her sister, talking about how she couldn't wait to get out of this shithole town and move somewhere civilized with Charles. The room erupted. These were Millside people, born and raised, and they didn't take kindly to outsiders, or insiders who acted like outsiders, insulting their home. Mayor Patterson stood up. "I think you and your lady friend should leave, Charles." "This is harassment," Melissa shouted. "This is illegal." "Actually," said Officer Martinez, who'd been enjoying a beer in the corner, Recording conversations in public places is perfectly legal. And that insurance policy thing, that's just good financial planning, right? The crowd laughed, but it wasn't friendly laughter. Charles grabbed Melissa's hand and pushed through the crowd toward the exit, but I wasn't finished with them yet. "One more thing," I called out. The final image appeared on the wall, a photograph of Charles and Melissa in bed together, taken from outside our bedroom window. I'd hired a private investigator to document their affair for the divorce proceedings, and he'd gotten some very clear shots. The room went silent again, then exploded in whispers and gasps and nervous laughter. Charles turned around one last time, his face purple with rage. "You're a dead man, Hart." "Is that a threat?" Officer Martinez asked, suddenly very interested. Charles realized what he'd said and tried to backtrack, but it was too late. He'd made a public threat in front of half the town's leadership and a police officer. "I think you folks need to leave now," Martinez said. "And Mr. Mercer, I'll be filing a report about that threat." They left, finally, pushing through the crowd of people who were no longer pretending to hide their disgust and amusement. Melissa was crying, her makeup running, her perfect image destroyed. Charles was sweating through his expensive suit, his reputation in ruins. I stayed until closing time, accepting congratulations and buying drinks for everyone who wanted to toast my victory. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. But the best part was still to come. The next morning, I got a call from my lawyer. Melissa wanted to settle the divorce quickly and quietly. She was offering me the house, the business assets, and a promise to leave town permanently in exchange for me not pursuing charges related to the life insurance policy and the embezzled money. "What do you want to do?" my lawyer asked. "Accept the offer," I said, "but add one condition." What's that?" "She has to return my grandmother's ring." 2 weeks later, I was back in my house. My business was thriving with the Cleveland contract, and Melissa and Charles had slunk out of town like the cowards they were. The gossip mill had moved on to other scandals, but people still nodded to me on the street with a new kind of respect. Erin came home for the weekend, proud of her old man for finally standing up for himself. "I knew you had it in you, Dad," she said over dinner at our kitchen table. "Had what in me?" "The killer instinct. Mom always said you were too nice for your own good." "Maybe I was," I said. "But nice guys don't always finish last. Sometimes they just take longer to get started." That night, I sat on my front porch with a beer and looked out at the neighborhood I'd almost lost. Millside wasn't much to look at, a fading industrial town full of broken dreams and stubborn people who refused to give up. But it was home. It was mine, and I'd fought for it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over." I smiled and deleted the message. Charles could threaten me all he wanted from whatever rock he and Melissa had crawled under. He'd already shown everyone in town what kind of man he really was. His words carried no weight anymore. I finished my beer and went inside, locking the door behind me. Tomorrow I had work to do. Real work, the kind that built things instead of tearing them down. The kind of work that made a man proud to look at himself in the mirror. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully in my own bed. 3 months later, I was at Lucky's gym when Tommy burst in with a newspaper. "You got to see this," he said, spreading the paper on the equipment bench. The headline read, "Former Millside businessman arrested for insurance fraud." The article detailed Charles's arrest in Phoenix, where he'd been caught trying to stage his own death to collect on a life insurance policy. Apparently, he and Melissa had burned through their money faster than expected and had resorted to increasingly desperate schemes to stay afloat. Says here his accomplice was also arrested, Tommy noted. One Melissa Hart, formerly of Millside. I read the article twice, shaking my head at their stupidity. They'd gone from small-town affair to big-city felony in less than 6 months. Some people never learned. "Feel bad for them?" Lucky asked. "No," I said honestly. "I feel bad for the people they would have hurt next. Because that's what people like Charles and Melissa did. They hurt people. It's what they were good at, what came naturally to them. The only difference between hurting me and hurting strangers was that strangers wouldn't see it coming. At least I'd had the chance to fight back. That evening, I called Erin at school to tell her about the arrests. She was quiet for a long moment after I finished reading the article. "Are you okay, Dad?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Better than fine." "I mean, are you okay with Mom being in jail?" I thought about that question seriously. Was I okay with it? Was I happy about it? Did I feel vindicated or sad or angry? "I'm okay with justice," I said finally. "Your mother made her choices. Charles made his. They have to live with the consequences. Just like you had to live with the consequences of their choices." "Exactly. But I chose to fight back instead of lying down and taking it. That made all the difference." After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen. my kitchen, in my house, and thought about choices and consequences and the long, winding road that had brought me to this moment. A year ago, I'd been a different man, complacent, trusting, willing to believe the best in people even when they showed me their worst. I'd been the kind of man who got taken advantage of because he didn't fight back. But that man was gone now, replaced by someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous to people who mistook kindness for weakness. I opened a beer and raised it in a toast to the empty kitchen. To the last laugh, I said aloud. And somewhere in a Phoenix jail cell, I hoped Charles Mercer could hear me laughing.